Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Blue Dog Whisperer. I have a very special guest with me, congressional candidate for New Jersey's second congressional district, Tim Alexander. Very nice to have you.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here and to hopefully talk about some of the issues with you.
Absolutely. And we have a couple of other guests, Rain and Thunder, outside. It's really loud, so I hope that the audio doesn't pick it up. But in case it does, I warned you.
Okay.
So let's get started. So just to give the listeners some background information, this is the bottom third of New Jersey, I would say, your district. It's a very large district in terms of the area, um, and it is currently being represented by the, I would say, infamous Republican Jeff Van Drew, who used to be a Democrat and switched parties. This you ran against Jeff Van Drew last year. You announced in 2021, and I wanted to ask you, was there a specific event that really pushed you to put your hat in the ring?
I really can't say there was one event. There was this. It just seemed like with the pandemic and we had George Floyd's murder and some of the police brutality issues. It just stacked. And to give you a little bit of a kind of break that apart a little bit. I was actively supporting in 2020 our Democrats trying to get at the time Amy Kennedy was our candidate, and I wanted to see her get in office, as well as some of our state congressional races in 21. So I really got active in 21, trying to help as hard as I can to get as many Democrats in office, and started talking to people. I was knocking doors for candidates, and I started learning some of the issues. And it became clear to me that we were underrepresented on a federal level, on a state and federal level, but more so on a federal level. And what I mean by that is that resources weren't coming back to South Jersey. New Jersey is getting resources, but they just didn't seem to be coming south of Trenton, Burlington County area. So I started paying closer attention. As you probably know, I'm a retired law enforcement officer, 27 years, retired as a detective captain for the Atlanta County Prosecutor's Office. And I then became an assistant district attorney for the city of Philadelphia for a period of time before getting into civil rights practice. And when I saw Derek Chauvin's murder, it really triggered in me my own experience before becoming a law enforcement official. I too was a victim of police brutality as an African-American Black man in Newark Police Department. Racially profiled me, and it resulted in them shooting at me and charged me with a crime I didn't commit. And ultimately I had to fight and clear my name, which I was able to do. And through encouragement, strong encouragement from my grandfather, his argument was, if you really want to make change, join the police force, make it from within. So that got me on that path, and I started I got back in, or I got into law enforcement work. I was in the academy before that and had to cycle out. So all that being said, I started my journey in my law enforcement career, and I had observed some issues that I had to report with respect to racism in law enforcement, and yet I still made it to the rank of detective captain. And just today, I had a great conversation with my former colleague who retired as the chief of detectives. He too is an African-American man. And we were talking about all the way back in the late 80s, early 90s, when he had identified a racist act in our organization. And he didn't report it. He attacked the people, but verbally, that is, who were actually, they had Ku Klux Klan material hanging in their office. And he
They
went
had
after them.
in their office.
They had Ku Klux Klan recruitment material hanging in their
Wow,
office.
wow.
So, when he brought me, I didn't know him that well at the time. And when I saw him writing a note on their door, the office door, I went and read the note because, I'm a cop and curious. And I went and tracked him down because it was pretty tough note. And he told me, did you go in the office? Did you see what it was? And finally I did. And lo and behold, it was there. So I physically took the material, I took it to their supervisor, and I said, look, this is a problem. And I wish the story ended there, but it went back and forth, and it became a long ordeal. And that was, though, my first time having to confront open racism in law enforcement. And I share this story not because there's some level of bravery, but because you can confront wrongdoings as a police officer committed by other police officers and still have a very good career. I'm very proud of my career. I'm very proud of the fact that I retired as a detective captain in charge of a very large section of the organization. I'm very proud of the fact that my friend retired as as the chief of the organization. So those things were accomplished, even though we were very vocal and strong advocates for equity justice within law enforcement. And so when I saw, Derek Chauvin, as I was mentioning earlier, do commit his crime against George Floyd, it triggered within me my own experiences. So I tried to deal with it, process it. I was writing a lot about it. I started writing a police training outline just as a way of saying this is a way, not just to complain, but to show where I think the country should go with police training, where the issues were, where the problems were. And I pushed it out to a bunch of friends, including the gentleman I just referenced. And I didn't get a whole lot of responses back, at least not responses that were actioned. So that was like another layer to this trigger that got me into politics. And when I saw January 6th occur, and my daughter at the time was going through a major health crisis, and January 6th happened to be the day, her first lucid day, coming out of a long period where she wasn't able to communicate clearly with us. And so she called me and she says, "Hey, Dad, you see what's going on in Washington?" And so that kind of snapped me back into paying attention to things. And the end of that evening, I don't know if you recall, but our congressman, Jeff Van Drew, was back on the floor after everything was done, and started making his argument why Pennsylvania and Arizona should be disenfranchised from their votes. So it really, just made it clear to me that he wasn't representing us. He wasn't interested in representing our interests. He wasn't speaking for us, and the things he was doing wasn't reflective of South Jersey. So I started looking at the numbers. I started looking at what we actually pay out. New Jersey is pretty much at the bottom of the rung as far as federal dollars it receives for dollars it goes out. By way of example, for every $1, we get around 70 cents back, compared to a state like New Mexico, who is number one. For every $1, they get $4.34 back. And then you look at a state like Kentucky, Mitch McConnell state, for every $1, they get $2 back. So I don't, I'm not depriving states that are with poverty and they need as much assistance as possible. My concern is that we are among the states that are supporting those other states. And when you have a state like or a senator like Mitch McConnell, who fought us on receiving relief after Superstorm Sandy, and his state is receiving money that we're paying for, it just burned me to no end. And I looked at what economic representation we were getting from our congressman as far as bringing federal resources back to our district to help us build our economy and create jobs and attract businesses to come here. And the answer was none. He was part of that group, and remains so, of opposition and fight against. We don't get a discount for our taxes and not receiving benefits for the federal dollars that we pay. It'd be one thing if Jeff was getting, Congressman Van Drew was getting credits, saying, okay, I blocked this and I blocked that, so now we're going to get a tax credit because of it. That doesn't happen. We're still paying the same amount of money and we're not receiving anything back because our Congress representation doesn't believe that we should be getting these things. So it became clear to me that he wasn't the person for this position. And I stepped up and decided that I was going to throw my hat in the ring. I knew nothing about running for Congress. It was a strong learning curve. Despite that, we didn't win clearly, but we didn't do bad. We were outspent 10-1, but yet we still managed to get 95,400 some votes. We were able to have such a strong grassroots campaign and build a tremendous volunteer base. And the problem was we just didn't reach enough people with the message. So we know we have to accomplish this cycle. And the goal here is to raise the capital that's necessary to get the message out every nook and cranny of this district, so people they can make an informed choice. They still may not choose me, but at least they're going to know who I am, what I stand for, and quite honestly, the policies that I believe strongly in That's something for every single person in this district, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat. If you're where the majority of people are in this country, which is right in the middle, some leaning left, some leaning right, um, then you're going to love everything I present. If you're at the far extreme of one side or the other, then you're probably not going to like it. You're going to think that I'm not progressive enough on the far left side, and you're going to think that I'm, there's some bleeding heart liberal on the far right side. But I believe that the majority of us are in the middle, and that we want to see progress. We want to see progress by any means necessary. And we actually want to reap the benefits of our investment. We want a return on our investment of that being our tax dollars, to see the money come back to our district and actually be spent on improving our district and bringing jobs and improving the lives of individuals, taking some of the burdens off our county and state tax rolls and putting them where they belong, on our federal tax roll. By way of example, in Atlantic County, there's a bridge that is over Intercoastal Waterway. That's $600,000 a year on maintenance that goes to keeping that bridge functioning. It's a drawbridge, and yet it should be paid for by the federal government, or at least partially. So imagine if we could get that $600,000 back to the county taxpayers, and that maybe stabilize, if not reduce their taxes. And we could find projects like that all over the district. So these are some of the motivations that keep me going.
Well, Jeff Van Drew's voting record appears to have be getting worse and worse as each year goes on. I remember specifically in 2020 when I was really rooting for Amy Kennedy. I was looking at Jeff Andrews' website and I thought some of this sounds like Democrat light stuff, and he is governed as anything but that. He is not governed as you said, as a member of the sensible center at all. So why do you think the voters keep voting him back in?
I think that first of all, it's a wonderful question, right? Because that's the $1 million question. Why does Jeff keep winning elections? And I think there becomes a certain sense of you get a certain sense of security that people vote blindly, that Republicans are notorious participants in the electoral system. They vote. And while Democrats have interest and care about their community and care about each other, it doesn't always translate to a vote. They don't necessarily understand where they're, why they should vote, why they should participate. And I could tell you the principal question we were asked during the last cycle wasn't why I should vote for you, Tim Alexander. It was, why should I vote? In fact, many people didn't know who Jeff Van Drew was. They didn't know who their congressman was, and they didn't care. Their thing is, why should I vote when all you guys do is talk about this is what you want to do? We don't see you until there's election cycle and nothing gets done. And what I tried to convey to them was that, listen, the system requires your participation, and you literally have to become the squeaky wheel to get the grease. When you become the squeaky wheel and you participate, and people know that your vote has merit and strength, then they will listen to you. They will court you, whether it's Republican or Democrat. They know that you're going to be the one who makes a decision who wins the next election. Non-participation means they get to ignore you. They get to say, okay, I don't have to worry about that section of the district because they don't vote. So let me go over here and make sure that my supporters vote. And I think that's exactly the playbook that the Republicans both capitalize on, and with that rely heavily on, so they don't have to change. And if the people who they are, if it's a small populace that is voting and is participating, and that small populace is at that far right extreme, and they don't want anything to happen, they don't want to see any movement and progress in government, because they think any compromise is a step closer to giving away resources, then they vote. And so Van Drew knows that he can't be moving towards bettering the district, which will cost money, because he's not going to be able to explain that, and people are not going to appreciate that, those who vote for him. And so he's answering to that base. This is the same base that believes that CRT is being taught in elementary schools. And somehow it shouldn't be, because even though it's American history, it's the history that we've never learned before, and therefore in their minds we don't have a need to learn it. And quite honestly, it only makes people feel bad, so we shouldn't have to learn it. It's absolutely nonsense, right? But that's the squeaky wheel that's getting all the grease. Incidentally, that's also the squeaky wheel that the media seems to want to pay attention to. They don't want to talk to people who go to work every day, who really don't have time for all that. They just want to make sure that when they drive to work, that their car is not torn apart because of potholes, or the particular route that they need to take isn't detoured because a bridge is closed, or that the public transportation is still running. There's so many things that factor into everyday lives that people don't translate to their representation, because quite honestly, we're Americans, and we figure out when things go wrong, we figure out another way, as opposed to saying, why should I have to do that when I'm paying all this money? And truthfully, we are paying a tremendous amount of money. So this is what we have to convince people of, that there's a fundamental reason for your vote, and that is to see and actually feel and benefit from improvements to the district.
Representation can only matter if everyone votes, and a lot of times the representation is not reflective of the district as a whole, but only the people who voted in the previous election.
This is true, right? And so then we see people who, when things go sideways, well, they get out in the street and they protest, but they don't stay consistent. The protest should be in the ballot box as well as on the street, and we don't see that. We see tensions wane. We see fatigue set in, and then it's like, okay, well, nothing's going to change, or they said they were going to listen to us. Okay, let's take it easy and get back to our lives. And quite honestly, I think that I would rather see, do your protests, but then truly protest in the ballot box. And that's where it really makes a fundamental change.
You're absolutely correct. 2022 showed that it doesn't have to, basically, our elections don't have to be inevitable. When people were saying that the Republicans are going to take back the House of Representatives lock, stock, and barrel, it didn't happen that way because people, particularly people my age, voted and said, not so fast. And even though there's a slim majority, one could argue that the Republicans are in control because of some sensible Republicans in the Northeast, not the Marjorie Taylor Greens, which goes back to what you were saying about the sensible censor being representative of our country. And I would say that NJ2 is a very center to center right, or maybe even center left district. And I want to know, what are your favorite things about the district that you're running in, your district?
I think you just nailed it. And our diversity, right? We are extremely diverse in that you could go to rural Salem County, where my wife's from, and I fit right in wearing cowboy hats. Or I could go down to Atlantic City, and and we had that community. We had the casinos and the boardwalk. Ocean City, we have yet more of a family theme there. Up to Ocean County, there's so much diversity, and Cumberland County is a mix of everything. And we got oyster business and clamming, and I just think that there's not a more diverse community that I'm aware of anywhere than CD2. It's such a hodgepodge mix of good, hardworking people, from everything from the casino executive to the farmer, to a factory worker, to a police officer, to a New Jersey Transit operator. I mean, there's just so much that we have here, and we get to really just blend in and work with and hear from such a diverse group. So that's the number one thing that I love most about our district, is our diversity at all levels. I also love the fact that we consider ourselves a unique group in the state. We're 609ers, some even 5'6", but for the most part, we were always the 609ers back in the day. And we just have different interests than you see in the northeast part of our state. I'm not knocking anything, but I think you really have to understand the culture of South Jersey, because it is so diverse and so spread. We have Bangladeshis, and we have Islamic religions, and we have Jewish religions, and we have, you just name it, and we have a different flavor for everything. So understanding and appreciating that is why I really do love South Jersey. And I think it's nice to say, I live in South Jersey. I've raised my kids in South Jersey. This is who we are.
Well, I love living in South Jersey, hoping to get back soon. But NJ2 is not exactly what people who are outside the region think of when they think of Jersey, but we do have Jersey's diversity and so many of the positives of our state.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You're both your assessments correct. When people think of New Jersey, they think of the northeast corner, the suburbs of New York. And New Jersey is much, much more than that. And you come on down to check out our blueberry fields or our cranberry bogs, or our boardwalk or our farming. I mean, we have it all here. You name it, we have it.
Well, I was just down in Hamilton at the 4th of July parade and got some farm fresh blueberries. Nothing like store bought.
Yeah, you better believe it.
Absolutely. So, when you get to Congress, what will be some of your top priorities?
Well, number one is number one, two, and three, economics. My top priority is make sure that Jeff Van Drew is on this mission, if you will, to stop the wind turbine programs that we have going. And we talk about representing a diverse group. To me, being a member of Congress means you represent everyone, even those who didn't vote for you. And you have to be open and willing to listen to them and make sure that even though your personal interests may not be aligned with, or personal ideology may not be aligned with everybody, you still want to make sure you bring everything to the table for discussion. That's your job. And so when I look at the wind turbine industry, I see clean renewable energy. I see the Columbia University report that wind energy is becoming cheaper to produce than fossil fuel energy. I see jobs on top of jobs, where we know from the last cycle, we pulled a report that in some of the oil producing states, some two or three of the oil producing states that also have wind energy is surpassing them with the exception of natural gas. So, there's so much opportunity there. Over in Salem County, we're building a wind farm, or wind farms being built. 200 turbines, going to create a massive amount of jobs. There's a company that's looking to come in over there that's going to build the motor heads to the turbines. We're looking at thousands of jobs. We come over to off the coast where they're putting wind turbines up. We need wind technicians to both build and maintenance those turbines. Hundreds, if not thousands, of jobs. We go over to the Carpenters Union. They built a facility to train people on how to build and repair wind turbines right there in Egg Harbor City, between Egg Harbor City and Hamilton on Route 30. So you're looking at union jobs, you're looking at good paying jobs, sustainable jobs. Wind energy is growing, and it's going to be the future for us. We need to harness that, pun intended, to make sure that we create jobs and we get people. Here's an opportunity for someone who graduated from high school, doesn't have any ambition to go to college, and yet they can still have a great career, making good money with sustainability and job security. Why on earth would anybody say we should block that because we're concerned that it may have a negative impact on marine life, when we could go all over the world and see where wind turbines have been in existence for tens of years, decades, excuse me, that that has not had an adverse effect on marine life. We have experts who say it has not had an adverse effect on marine life, and yet we're hanging our hat on that. For what reason? Because maybe the fossil fuel company is sponsoring this push to prevent wind energy from coming up or growing up wherever they can. And so they're hanging their hat on that, and they've enticed a few people who have multi-million-dollar homes that, do you really want to step out on your deck and see that turbine 15 miles off the coast, which, by the way, is going to be about 2 inches tall, and it's going to obscure your view of the sky? All ridiculousness, right? But that's what we seem to be getting as far as pushback, and not the reality that we have to work to preserve our climate, our planet. Right now, and literally on my way to come in for the podcast, I was listening to a report that we're experiencing thousand, if not multi-thousand year weather extremes that climatologists expect are going to happen more frequently. So we are in a terrible, terrible place. I'm not saying that stopping emissions of fossil fuels is going to reverse that, but we can stop the progression, or at least slow the progression of it, by adopting these changes. China has twice the number of wind turbines that we have, and they're leading the charge. By the way, they're only about 6% off the grid, where we have half that number and we're 9% out of the grid. But imagine if we could get that up to 30, 40, 50% of our energy comes from wind turbine. Like Ireland. Ireland has, I think they're somewhere in the middle of the list, nowhere near the number of turbines, but they're 54% off their grid coming from wind energy. We need to replicate that and take the burden of fossil fuels off our environment, and in the benefit of also saving some dollars in our pockets eventually. So that the whole point of that is that this is about saving our planet. This is about creating hundreds, if not thousands, of jobs, and in the process making cheaper energy resources that is sustainable and is renewable and is going to help us move into a better place than fossil fuel. And incidentally, speaking with some commercial fishermen, the base for these wind turbines are going to really help foster fishing harvesting. There's some question about the placement, whether or not they're too close for them to turn the boats around in, but those things can be worked out. As all parties come to the table, and that's what a congressman could be doing. He could be bringing the wind industry to the table with the fishing industry to make sure that we're doing something that's going to help them, particularly in our district where we rely heavily on fishing, so commercial fishing. So that's what our congressman should be doing, not putting out bogus campaign signs saying, "Oh, should save our shores, paid for by Jeff Van Drew for Congress." That's campaigning outside the campaign window, as far as I'm concerned. I leave it to individual towns to enforce whatever ordinances they have about putting those signs up, but it really is just a cheap shot in campaigning early.
Well, if you want to save the shores, climate change, some of these towns, especially in Long Beach Island, are projected to be underwater at some point in the not too distant future. So, and I don't think, and I worked for an environmental nonprofit for a little bit. I don't think the science is there as far as the whales washing ashore being because of wind turbines. I just don't think that there's evidence. I think the evidence points to rising sea levels or temperatures, right?
That's 100% correct. But there is a need to help us mitigate the effects of flooding, coastal flooding, coastal erosion. Where is that effort? Where are those signs? Let's stop the erosion. Let's stem the tide of floods. Where's that effort from our congressman to make sure that the resources coming back to New Jersey to look at all options, whether it be storm gates or whatever we have to do to and I'm not saying one particular plan, I've heard many of them, is the answer, but we could get subject matter experts to the table and look at all the plans and say, okay, let's pick the best of the best from each, and let's find a way to fund it, and let's actually save our shores and save our tourism and our industry down here by making sure that there is a shore to come to, and not redefining a new shoreline because the current one gets washed away. That's where I think our congressman should be focusing his energy, not on a possible, maybe unscientifically proven theory that backed, by the way, by the fossil fuel industry to say that our shorelines are somehow under attack by the idea of placing wind turbines offshore.
Well, I see a potential pattern because if this keeps up, we're probably going to see more incidents like Hurricane Sandy. And as we know, some of the people that Jeff Van Drew has been best friends with were not exactly kind to this region after Hurricane Sandy, as you pointed out.
That's it, right? And the the idea that New Jersey shouldn't receive help and benefits given the amount of money that we pay for the rest of the states is ludicrous. This is offensive. And that would have been my first argument on the floor in Congress. Let's talk numbers. Let's talk what New Jersey's actually spending in taxes for the federal tax dole here, that these other states are saying we shouldn't spend money. Let's talk about what you're getting from our taxpayers, And why can't we get some relief when we get devastated by a storm? Is there ever a time that Florida isn't experiencing some kind of catastrophic event? You know, how much money are we spending down there? Texas, the Gulf Coast of Texas. I mean, tornadoes going across the Midwest. Come on. I'm not saying that we should be at the top of the list, but we just want our fair share. I will never, and let me make this perfectly clear, because of my position here, I will never support a tax increase. I'm confident of that. I can't see a situation, amount of money that we pay and the least amount of money we get back that I can good faith say I'm 100% behind a tax increase. I just don't see how that's going to be possible. Plain and simple, full stop, not going to do it.
Well, I'm very happy to hear that. The congressman who was there before Jeff Van Drew, Frank Lobiondo, was very passionate about getting the shore and the community the relief they needed, and was questioning, yelling at the top of his lungs, rightfully so, why do we have to answer to some new rule or formula when it's our time of need, when we were generous with other places? And it seems like that we have not been getting that, had that kind of advocacy with the current congressman, your opponent.
That's 100% correct. And you know, the reality here, the way I see it, and then there maybe there's some argument against it, but I haven't been convinced yet. But our congressman doesn't want to work. For whatever his reasons are, he just doesn't perform. Occasionally he shows up at a ribbon cutting and he claims credit for things that, and even sometimes things that our senators have accomplished for us, he'll step in and say, "Oh, I got this for us." And it's not true. We know, you know, first of all, they're not going to say, they're not going to cover for him and say, "Oh yeah, you know, Congressman Van Drew led the charge for this." Not going to happen. Bipartisan stuff, great. Get involved in it. But how about you also take the lead on something that's going to benefit our district? I'm not convinced, nor can I be convinced that he will ever do that. And that's why he must go. And the fact that I'm willing to do everything I possibly can to one, get in the office, and then two, to perform each and every day that South Jerseyans receive their fair share, New Jerseyans, and particularly when that money comes to our state, it makes its way down south too, because a lot of times dollars do come here, but we don't see a lion's share of it down in the southern part. And look, the population is up north. I get it, the majority of the population, but we live here. This is our community, and we deserve to have our share of the resources. Plain and simple. I know some people will push back against me on this, but quite honestly, no one fights for your home like you do. It's that simple.
Well, it seems like Jeff Van Drew is taking the constituency for granted, and that's one of the reasons why I really hope you kick his ass.
Well, I appreciate it, and the reality is that we can win this election. We have to raise the resources. I encourage everybody listening to this to go to timalexanderforcongress.com. Donate whatever you can. If you could donate $5, $10, $15, $25, make it reoccurring, you know, once or twice a month. And guess what? We're raising, you know, tens of thousands of dollars because people are making small contributions and they're making them reoccurring. It's costing you no more than a chai latte to help us get real representation for South Jersey.
Well, it's clear, latte or our future. I'm going to go with our future.
It sounds good.
Just two more questions real quickly.
Sure.
Who are some of your political role models?
Well, I certainly admire and appreciate the work that Barack Obama have done for our country. I think that Senator Booker is another great example of the work he's done for us. And truthfully, you know, I know people have misgivings about President Biden, but man, look at the numbers. Look at the record. The guy is producing, and he's doing a great job. So I got to throw him in the mix too. There's just you know, so many other people. I guess if I sat down and thought about who do I think about in politics that I think do a great job, you know, we could go across the country to Eric Swalwell, Andre Carson, another great guy, does a good job out there in Indiana. There's just tons of them that are doing the yeoman's work, and they're representing their districts and making their districts proud that they're the member representing them.
Well, I'm glad you brought up President Biden, because the projected nominees for both parties are President Biden and President Trump. Do you think that having those two at the top of the ticket will have any impact on your race? And if so, what do you think will happen? Because I know that this is a separate race, but sometimes whoever's at the top of the ticket can dictate how the vote goes. So what do you think of that?
I think Biden at the top of the ticket is excellent for us, and that we could turn to his record. They could maybe turn to some of his gaffes or his age if they want to, make fun of that. I'm a civil rights attorney, and age discrimination is a part of the work I do. So I would caution anybody there. The fact that President Biden is older, it really hasn't bared out in his performance. And the fact that Donald Trump is only a couple of years younger would be the other person at the top of the ticket, would be a hard argument to say that Biden's too old for the job. Then we could get rid of the noise and look at the records and look at what Biden's accomplished in his 4 years versus what Trump accomplished in his 4 years. And by far, there's no comparison how much better the country is. The fact that we haven't had a pandemic that took out, over 1 million of American lives, and the fact that we've created millions of jobs, that we have a department, we actually pass infrastructure and didn't talk about infrastructure week every other day. So, there's no comparison, but if both of them are at the top of the ticket, this is going to be a fiery campaign, and I will love it.
I look forward to it. And the promises were made and kept by Trump. Well, they were made by Trump, but they were kept by Biden.
There it is.
Thank you so much for being on my podcast, and everyone go to timalexanderforcongress.com.
Thank you so much.
All right, thank you.